Welcome to a special rock and roll freestyle edition. Yours truly, Rainbow Dragon, always rock and roll for the farmers, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, grocery store clerks, all those involved in the trucking across the North American civilizational complex across Canada. It is still the Sabbath until about 7:44 when the sunset is gonna be that rock and roll. Yours truly, financially stressed, but I gotta say my gratitude. Grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and right here in this underground room of some temple where I died about 5 years ago, more than 5 years ago in February 2020. Right here, I had COVID, survived, I got triple vaxxed, and encourage you all to keep the protocols of the COVID era. That means disinfect the hands with hand sanitizer, disinfect the hands, and of course, rub when you go and touch the screen or whatever you do, and you do with the handle. And financially stressed, but gotta say my gratitude, grateful, thankful. My rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and got some caffeine free because I already had my coffee. So a little bit of tea right here, kind of good, and it's caffeine free. I gotta send some salutation to the one who person XYZ could be, whoever donated the teas at the community center here. We have a little community. It's not really a center. It's kind of like a community coin where the corner, I call it the food security community corner, where you have like people donating food and taking food. And I wish I could always also donate some more food because I take more than I give nowadays, but I give in that rock and roll. So as an artist, financially stressed, but rich in trillions of kisses, and I will to build the forgotten goddess temple. You heard that right. My dream to build here in the North American complex in Canada, preferably on the Canadian-US border, built both by Canadian and United States workers, because it's that North American collective, the dream dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, which is my dream for the public-private partnership of the fusion thereof, and to build the forgotten goddess, GODDSS, the goddess temple, GODDSS, a majestic temple dedicated to the forgotten goddess, and where, it can be meditation and seasons and dancing, or which is yours truly's favorite sport, because Rainbow Dragon is that, aka priestess, Hana priestess. Not a hoe, priestess, on the rainbow as I go. Rock and roll for the farmers and the butchers and the truckers and the nurses and the doctors. I don't mind washing feet, you know that I got a fleet. Satellites up in the sky, sunlight, sunshines, for the moon and for the earth. From the black fertile earth, coming with those rainbows going up and let's go. They trees and up the fertile plains, and the train conductors, butchers, bakers, grocery store clerks. I always rock and roll for them, and financially stressed, struggling, but always open for business. And I live with a condition, neurological mental condition known as Asperger's, which is not a mental illness. It is just that my brain is different. So our brains, there's a mutation in the Asperger's brain, which is still under a lot of, still examination and still a lot of research, but has been in the 21st century. A lot of research has been done, and there's more and more understanding about Asperger's. What it is not a mental illness. It is a neurological mental divergent condition, which makes me and other Aspies predisposed to special interest, also known as obsessive interest. And I have my holy trinity, and even on the Sabbath I indulge in geopolitical analysis. I'm an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and philosopher, artist, and mystic. And it's geopolitics, the study, the analysis thereof of geopolitics, sports and fitness, dancing. Dancing is my favorite sport. I love to dance. And rock and roll. So those activities, rock and roll, dancing, and sports, fitness, and dancing being my favorite sport and fitness activity, and geopolitical analysis, and being an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, and also a mystic who doesn't have all the answers. Want to be Telemite, bury a third of me with Papa Crawley up in New Jersey, a third of me in the Belvedere, conjuring arc on the mountain Mount Royal, and a third of me sent to the city of the pyramids, in the pyramids of Giza, there where the three major pyramids are. So 1/3 in Hampton, New Jersey, 1/3 on Mount Royal, and 1/3 in the Giza pyramids, where the pyramids are. My past life and reincarnations from ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, Sumer, Babylon. Sometimes a man or woman born 3 times post 7076. Was the 7076 in the United States, was born once as a woman, twice as a man, and served in the United States Armed Forces twice, 2 different wars, same army. And yours truly right here, It is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. I don't know so much about, of course, Star Wars, but I know a little bit because I watched a lot of Star Wars during COVID. My anonymous friend, if I make a million, I'm going to give half 50%. Please support this independent Aspie artist, athlete, philosopher, artist who's financially struggling, stressed, but always ready for business, always ready to get that rock and roll, always ready to pledge your allegiance. Legions, our family, support the dream, the dancing goddess, and the dragon kingdom is my dream fundamentally for the North American collective civilizational complex. For North America, I got this new cup was donated, so it got a little bit of lion on it. And let's go. We're gonna do a little bit of dream interpretation, dream discussions, and tarot and mystic and geopolitics and rock and roll. Got myself a new table, by the way. Got it from last year. After I did a little bit of muscle work, I did a little bit of work in, but I'm moving in the construction utensils, so a little bit of physical work. And besides getting some money, not that much, but well enough to get something to eat and pay a little bit of bills and get a affordable bottle of wine, because I'm not a big drinker, but once in a while I love to drink a little bit of wine, especially with some food. So I got a new table here, a new table, round, and got two sides, providentially, two sides representing Canada and the United States, which we need to get united, because of course, as an independent geopolitical theoretical honest and theorist, not just because I was born right here on this island of Montreal in past lives incarnations or in the United States, but of course because as an independent geopolitical theoretical honest and theorist, I have to make this statement again. And of course, I take great pride in my geopolitical work and philosophies, which are for the North American collective, for the North American civilizational collective, what I call the North American civilizational complex of North America, because we are an emergent civilizational complex, which is not totally divorced, but is distinct from Western civilization. So we have our distinctions from Western civilizations, but we're not totally divorced. And I have that Canada there. I see more and more flags being raised up. The Canadian maple leaf, red and white, and gotta go with the stars and the blue to get a conjoint with the dragon. Pledge your allegiance, legions. Nobody's born a dragon, not even myself. Took blood, sweat, and tears to change my name. Still got a paper up for the finances and money to officially change my name. But here it is. I got Canada tatted up, the maple leaf, and of course the word Canada, 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 how it was originally hundreds of years ago. It's Canada right there. I don't know when I have this tattoo, probably decades and decades and decades ago. Got it tatted up here more than maybe 20, 22 years, 25 years. I'm not sure exactly when I got it, but here it is. So I always have my Canada on me, So in terms of the, always got the Canada on me, yours truly. So it's rock and roll, geopolitics, and of course, fitness dancing. So what I'm going to say now is that, of course, that our geopolitical interests. So both the United States and Canada, citizens and political leaders have to say yes to this following statement. There's no maybe and there's no no to this geopolitical reality, and all other things considered outside of the geopolitical aspect of geopolitics, because geopolitics of course comprises, it's a whole universe. It's nation states, civilizations, religions, culture, business, finance, economics, and the individual and the collective, and we are part of what I call the great North American civilizational complex, or the civilizational complex of North America, which is Canada, United States, Mexico, and of course the islands, Jamaica, Haiti, and Cuba. But Cuba is a paradox because Cuba retained their Marxist, Leninist, Castroism, and Che Guevaraism type of socialist Marxist system. It's still socialist Marxist officially, right? The one-party socialist Marxist state. But Cuba is still part of the North American collective. But the paradox of Cuba is that they have still maintained their revolutionary Cuban socialism, because it's a unique communist socialist to the realities of the island of Cuba, which is about 11 million people, just like about the same population here in Quebec. So Cuba and the islands are also part of North America, or the North American collective. But us here in Canada, we're north, the true north, strong and free. Where my brothers and sisters are south, the land of the free and the home of the brave. I hope it's not too much to ask from this financially struggling artist, athlete, philosopher, from the home of the brave, the land of the free and the home of the brave, to when you hear this message, to HUG, hug like you never hugged before, to HUG, hug like you never hugged before, like with consent. I obviously don't start hugging people randomly in the street, because that's not the way to deal with our fellow citizens. And of course, myself with Asperger's always have this more difficulties in these social interactions, but I'm good at geopolitics, I'm good at rock and roll and dancing, although at certain things, Asperger's, we always have to build bridges, because there's not a lot of Aspies like myself in the world. Is less than 1%, less than half of a percentile It's 0.44%. So it's I'm part of this tiny small minority of neurodivergence, where once our brains are different, and so the difference in the brain, the mutation, the some call it a part of an evolutionary process. I don't know much about that because I'm clumsy sometimes, and certain things I have difficulties, with certain things and following certain instructions. I have to be repeated, and things of that nature, which can be more difficult for Aspies. But we're super intense, super focused, and super concentrated when we're involved in those special interests, which we have, aka obsessive interest. But it doesn't render justice for me to utilize the word obsessive, because an obsession has a more negative connotation. But in geopolitics, I gotta say I take great pride as an independent geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist who have. I go back to 2019 October November, when I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019 October November, I had predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration on the horizon, and now it seems that many of the what I had predicted back then in October 2019 is unfolding, and has been unfolding at least since around since about during COVID, beginning in February 2020 and up till now, with the Russia Ukraine crisis and situation in the Middle East, Israel Hamas, Israel Palestine, or Israel and the Arab world, and of course on the horizon potentially China and Taiwan, and now Pakistan and India and Pakistan with the Kashmir situation. And again, I have to say that as much as I have read and have spent many years with one foot in the streets, one foot in the library, struggling, suffering, been depressed, been suicidal, and when I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017, that event got me out of being depressed and suicidal, because before that I was depressed, I was suicidal. And my community, which is a small tiny fraction of the population, not even 1%, 0.44%, Aspie, people with Asperger's, usually there's a higher rate of unemployment, unfortunately, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about what Asperger's is. It's considered a mental illness that can be like caught and can be transmitted, which is nonsense. It's not that's not what Asperger's is. It's just that our brain, there's a divergence, there's a mutation. I'm going to call it as sort of a mutation in the brain, and that's how we look at the world differently. And it's not something which can be medicated. There's no medication. It's just I require a certain support and a certain understanding in certain levels of my interaction with non-Aspreys, with neurotypicals, and it's sometimes that's it requires a certain things which myself do not fully grasp, and Aspies have trouble grasping or putting into application non-written societal rules, and we tend to repeat things 2 3 times, or echolalia is repeating the same words or sentence that we hear, or we might say something from the movies which we hear. So that is a strange, or we might there is a strong tendency and the characteristics, because the symptoms is for a mental illness, so I'm going to utilize the characteristics of Asperger's, is also making use of too much academic, intellectual, philosophical, more sophisticated language when we communicate with others. So that might be a little bit of a impediment for a realization or a collaboration, even, cooperation. But it's something which Aspies will also have to work on it, both sides, right, to build bridges. So in the geopolitical aspect, in being an independent geopolitical theoretical aspect, in the world of geopolitics, that is my kingdom, that is my realm. So every day I do geopolitical theorizing and analysis for intensity and for hours and hours and hours. Then I revise my philosophies, and I specialize in the 20th century, and of course on a day-to-day basis on the 20th and 21st century. And I had predicted that due to the fact that many nation state civilizations, regional complexes have not fully resolved their conflicts from the 20th century, that those conflicts are going to be spilled over, they're going to re-intensify in the 21st century. And for much of what we see now, the conflicts on the horizon, of the conflicts that have reignited in the 21st century, in the past 5 years, ever since February I had COVID in 2020, those conflicts have resurfaced. Because Russia and Ukraine, it dates from the Cold War period, which lasted about almost 45 years, between March 1947 and December 1991, when the official dissolution of the Soviet Union occurred by Gorbachev's decree, by the decree of Gorbachev. So, and we here, North Americans, as a Quebecer, Canadian North American, this is my home, so this is what I know most. What I know most. As an individual experience with my own difficulties and financial struggling and closed doors and loneliness and suffering and being depressed, all those experiences as an individual that add up to the great North American collective. And we here, we're an emergent civilizational collective, because it's formed from different peoples who came and who amalgamized and who joined with with creation of new values and adoption of the institution of liberty and freedom and all the things which we have as a cultural emergency and freedom, of course, new cultural emergence, which reflects in music and sports. So Canada and United States both conjoined, and also Mexico is part of North America. And so we are a new civilizational complex, an emergent one, because others can trace thousands of years, but we, just like freedom, is a new thing under the sun, and I have freedom, freedom, freedom tatted up here, supposedly from my journals, because I kept journals. I don't remember, but supposedly I got it in New York City, New York City, New York City. So my life mostly, I go back 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, then I kind of, more than 11 years is like a blackout, RA, retrograde amnesia. So there's a blackout in my memory, so I live with plenty of scars on my body and been depressed, been suicidal, and cross Canada coast to coast. That event really changed my whole life. I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, who I consider family, Quebecers, Canadians, and my brothers and sisters in North America, and all ALL, all who come to join us, and of course my brothers and sisters blacks, who are 44, 45, close to 45 million of the North American population, 13.3, 13.4%, including my neighbors, are blacks. So I always have to make to treat each other like equals in the North American collective and all who come to join us. But from a geopolitical perspective, I know North America, and I'm a North American individual, part of this collective, and so many things I have to work on myself. If you are to fight racism and fight other things, it's Aspies, we do it by action, more by doing something for others rather than the blah 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 verbal consolation or verbal demonstrations or verbal pronunciations. That's a unique thing of Aspies. Sometimes we might seem that we don't have compassion or empathy. It's not that we do. And a lot of Aspies suffer and go through depression more than the neurotypicals, the majority of 99.56%. So that's, we show compassion more by action, by doing something if we can offer something, rather than, so there's something which needs to be clarified because sometimes it can be misunderstood. And so yeah, we have certain things which we have to deal with, but here we have to make peace, and peace through also action, and peace in a vigorous way, and reconciliation, just like on a football field. You see, for example, Tom Brady, getting smashed and sacked by Ray Lewis in the past, because they both retired. In the past, they get sacked, and he gets three sacks. Ray Lewis gets 3 sacks on Tom Brady, or on my 49er quarterback 11 years ago, or during the Hardball Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl. Blackout Bowl, one of my favorite Super Bowls was the Hardball Bowl, or the Bro Bowl, Blackout Bowl, where my 49ers lost by 3, so you see the quarterback gets sacked by Ray Lewis, my 49er quarterback, back in that Super Bowl, also known as the Blackout Bowl, where my 49ers lost by only 3 points, but still the Baltimore Ravens won the Super Bowl. So you see him getting sacked 3 times, but at the end of the guess, they had good game, good play, played good, and love you, love you, love you, Ray Lewis to my 49er quarterback. It's kind of a paradox, but basically mean that the meaning behind that sports gridiron North American football analogy is that we have to, sometimes be strong and do action, and then we reconcile in a sportsman-like manner, in a sportsmanship like manner, in the North American collective. So we got to cultivate that, because I don't like violence. I do not like violence. I'm somebody who doesn't like violence. I lived my own trauma and was surprised attacked, hit my head, and had a dislocated right arm. I have to go retrieve the archives of the Jewish General, because I don't remember exactly what year was that, and was put on some medication. I had like a coma, my own City Empire episode. So I remember moving here from a moldy underground, moldy place. It was like greenish, whitish, black, and reddish type of mold, different color like mold. And I moved here from a basement, underground basement, and I crossed Canada coast to coast. I started working out, and I've written tens of thousands of pages of mainly geopolitical analysis and philosophies, and for mainly my initiatives, protocols, and call to the great public-private partnership, which is manifesting as my dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, which is fundamentally for the fusion of the North American collective in the public-private partnership to create a common passport, common currency, and of course to get defense, security, service, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, part of the Dragon Army initiative, and to be integrated with all existing security institutions and organizations for SSD, security, service, and defense for SSD, and please millionaires, give some charity. And I wish I could afford a massage therapy session, but I'm gonna take a bath because grateful that I'm gonna have the hot water to take a bath in because I keep since 2017, since summer 2017 when I crossed Canada coast to coast, I keep a very fit, active lifestyle. I keep a very fit and active lifestyle. Fitness is something that I indulge in overly with a lot of intensity and concentration. It is my special interest, and I gotta say that I'm gonna flex a bit. I lost about between 80 and 93 pounds, between 80 and 93 pounds since 2017, and I got to make a point that since 2018, I have been able and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border, thanks to my anonymous friend who wasn't my friend because of the money, because I never had any. Gifted those red gloves. I got red gloves donated. And of course, I will with the construction workers Canadian joint build on the Canadian-US border, the great North American people's Imperial Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than the Super Bowl, were bigger than the sports arena complex, the North American People's Coliseum, to be 11 times bigger than the Harbor, where the Harbor Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl, was played, where of course the Caesar Superdome is now called Caesar Superdome, but it used to be called the Mercedes Benz. So we changed the names. The stadium, the arena in New Orleans, Louisiana, there's the event known as the Harbor Bowl, aka Blackout Bowl, which is one of my top favorite Super Bowls of all time, where my 49ers of San Francisco lost to the Ravens Baltimore. But to build a mega sports for sportis in perpetuities, where there's sports 24/7 sports events, where super leagues and the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, and whereas of course universities and high schools and the sports, all sorts of sports and fitness and sports and fitness and dancing 24/7 to be built on the Canadian-US border. Let's build it. And the first event to be me fighting Donald Trump, Dragon versus Trump. The first event to be me versus Donald Trump. And you can see hundreds of my videos from 2018 when I first started challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match on the Canadian-US border. Am I going to say I would have voted for Kamala Biden Harris? And Donald Trump, just admit you made a mistake with Canada to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, and tariffs this past month since February, March the 4th, when the other tariffs were initiated. And he made a mistake as geopolitically. And now leave the baggage at the door. Everything whatever other considerations, that I'm androgynous, 50-50, pansexual, that I'm a pro-labor and love universal revolutionary centrist, when my centrism is tied hand in hand with my trinity of theories, which I'm calling for the implementation across the North American collective, the CIT citizen integration theory, the DRT debt fusion theory, and the DFT democratic fusion theory to be implemented via the fourth dimension love. That as a the primary importance, the primary thing to know is that in geopolitics, our leaders, my uncle Carney and my granddaddy Trump, has to, everybody, Republican, Democrat, centrist, on the left, in the center, me myself as a Democratic Republican, have to say yes to this. As Canadians, Quebecers, our main, primary, number one, in the number one spot, our main geopolitical interest in terms of geopolitics as Canadians, Quebecers, is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. But that is just like small, little brother, big brother, little sister, big family, North American collective. 50 states plus the 10 provinces and 3 territories, that's 63 for the 63. That our interest is to have the best cordial military, security, economic, commercial, cultural, sports, in all ways, the best relations with each other. And that applies for my brothers and sisters in the 50 states in the USA. Geopolitically, just in terms of geopolitics, it's vice versa. I'm going to say a providential like my table. It's red, the bottom. And I got it last year, a few months ago, and it has two sides. It has to be the fusion thereof like that for a public-private partnership, because our main geopolitical interest, this has to be, yes, this is a constant. Just like the pi number in mathematics is 3.1416, this cannot be changed or altered. It's yes, 100%. Our main Quebecers, Canadians, Quebecers, Whence here in the North American Collective, we made the great North American civilizational compromise, the compromise of the French language. You can see there in the back, that's the Quebec flag. With the fleur de lis, that's the Canadian, and there's the United States. See the stars? The stars there. You got the stars there in the back. See, right here, stars. There's the United States flag. On the other table, you can see the United States, like you can see the stars there. So it's got to be fused, got to be joined, you know. So geopolitically, our main interest, both from as Canadians and both my brothers and sisters in the United States, in the USA, in the number one place, number one geopolitically, our main top interest is to have the best, most cordial economic, financial, commercial, military, security relations with my brothers and sisters in the USA. That is a constant, just like the pi number. So that is a constant geopolitically, just geopolitics, not other things. That's just geopolitics. Mark Carney and all the leaders, conservative liberals, from a geopolitical perspective, my uncle Legault, with sometimes I disagree, I agree, but our top priority is to have the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, military, security relations with the United States of America. And vice versa, the United States, Congress, Senate, Granddaddy Trump, Dragon versus Trump, is to have the best cordial military security relations with Canada. And my brothers and sisters, Canadians, the king is absent, the king is absent, the king is absent. I try to work on my own when if if you feel sometimes that maybe I'm being sensitive, or just Aspies, you have to let us know. Sometimes we offend, we can be pretty direct, seemingly rude or offensive, but it's not that, it's just our brains are different, and so certain things we don't know. We know our special interest. I know geopolitics. Certain things I'm clumsy. I lost a lot of friends, built bridges. I was depressed, suicidal, depressed. I'm happy, joyous now, I changed my life when I crossed Canada. I got those red gloves. I'm auctioning them for $1 million, $1 million, red gloves, which are gifted from a friend, and I still put them to good use in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead to work out, train, exercise, get super summer fit, and let's do it me, Donald versus Trump, ASAP. June, July, September. Let's do it September 11th, September 11th. Build the North American Great Imperial Coliseum, Canada, United States, and fuse in a public-private partnership and create the Dragon Army, aka North American Imperial People's Citizen Security Service and Defense, Security Service and Defense, only for security service and defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, in a new institution that I'm calling to be a public-private partnership for North America fused. Just like the NHL, National Hockey League, and NBA, they're not national, really. Think about that. The NHL, National Hockey League, is not national, really. It's binational. And we have to create a common passport and a common currency, and my dream best for the fusion thereof. My brothers and sisters, the king is absent. King Charles is supposedly he's gonna come, he's gonna whatever. The king is absent. I do disagree with our leader pledging allegiance to the King of England. I disagree totally with that. I just said when Uncle Connie pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs, the king is absent. We got the butchers, the truckers, the bakers, the nurses, the public workers changing the aqueducts, the sewers, the construction workers, the builders, those flipping some burgers, cheeseburgers, hamburgers, and I gonna rock and roll for the daycare workers changing some dirty diapers. For the daycare workers changing some dirty diapers. I gotta sing that rock and roll for the daycare workers changing some dirty diapers with it. You know, King Charles is not gonna come fight for my fellow 44 million Canadians plus and my brothers and sisters in the USA if there was ever an invasion by east from the Atlantic or the west from the Pacific by either or armies of whatever superpower power of mega power of the world or alliance thereof. It's gonna be me taking the backpack and running towards the border to come help out and my brothers and sisters in the 50 states, and I hope vice versa, right? Vice versa. And it's gonna be me and others, public workers and all who gonna join, daycare workers and men and women and whatever, androgynous like myself, and who's gonna defend, and who's, if there's ever an invasion from whatever east or from the west, Canada, it's not gonna be King Charles. And the farmers, the butchers, the truckers, nurses, daycare workers, plumbers, electricians, firefighters, LOV to the firefighters. That's why we gotta rock and roll, I rock and roll for them 24/7 for years and years and years. When I go to my second home, many times I go to my second home, Mount Royal, headquarters of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, you know. I'm not perfect, far from it. I have scars on my body, live with trauma, survived being depressed, suicidal, paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, got food and coffee. I gotta say, an event, I survived on $11,000 in 2024 last year. Yeah, I survived on $11,000 last year. I survived on $11,000. I'm always open for business. I had many jobs, many employments, but you know, Asperger's, there's a high unemployment with amongst my tiny small fraction of a population who live with Asperger's. There's a high unemployment rate, very, because there's a lot of misunderstandings what Asperger's is, and sometimes, you know, we can be offensive or direct, and certain things we just don't understand. We just have to be told, and then we take action. So back to geopolitics. Our number one priority as Canadians is to have the best, most cordial relations with the United States. There's no negotiation. That is a constant. You know, like the mathematical pi number for the to find the area or the circumference is related to a circle. It's 3.1416, and then it goes the numbers to ad infinitum. 3.1416, and then it goes continue. The numbers keep on going. But that is a mathematical constant. Geopolitically, although the world has changed in the past 45 months, 44 plus months, 3.5 years, the world has changed. New conflicts, new armaments, rearming of Europe. I take into consideration, I do it on the daily, and not only that, but I predicted this in 2019. Again, I go to 2019, October, November, and I have proof. I have proof online because the videos are online when I discuss my World War III scenario. And consequently, I produced a workout training program system, which I encourage all military forces of Canada, the Canadian Armed Forces, the security forces, the police, RCMP, and of course, all fellow citizens in the high schools, in the universities to try it out and do it, because it takes about an hour to do it. The rules are simple, requires no equipment, and it's called the General War Integrated Total Body Training System, aka Dragon Army. I have myself done, performed more than 372 of more than them. And when I reached 300, I said to change my name into from Dragon became Dragon, Dragon became Dragon, from blood, sweat, and tears, right in this room, office and temple, whence I died. And in many ways, I'm becoming Dragon every day, Rainbow Dragon. But you know, dragons can spit that fire nonetheless, but only and solely for SSD, security, service, and defense. Because I don't like violence, and aggression has to be channeled. Sportsmanship. Myself being, I'm androgynous, pansexual. You know, you have to be 18 to me. Come do some love in black, white, men, women. You know, Pride Parade is once a year, but if you're LGBTQ, you're LGBTQ 24/7. Pride parades is once a year, and I go. You know, I've been going for many years now to Pride parades, and I made lots of friends and made out a little bit sometimes, but you know, a few callbacks, and then with Asperger's is weird. It's hard for us to maintain long-term friendships. You know, friends with benefits only from now on. Pledge your allegiance, legions to our family. That's the rock and roll song. Friends with benefits only from now on. You know. Friends with benefits only from now on, and that's how I roll, rock and roll from now on. Friends with benefits. And geopolitics, to the back to the geopolitical arena. So now we have a new conflict on the horizon, and again I go back to 2019 when I predicted that, due to the fact what many different analysis and the different levels of analysis were taken into consideration, but generally, and the common denominator was that, due to the fact that many nation states have not fully resolved their conflicts dating from the 20th century, especially during the Cold War period, such as Israel. Hamas was founded in the 1980s. It's a conflict which has not been fully resolved. There wasn't a reconciliation, a final reconciliation. And then from in the 20th century, from the 20th century, there's going to be a spillover in the 21st century. And Ukraine and Russia, it's a conflict which was unresolved, dating again from the Cold War period, which lasted almost 45 years, officially 44 years and 9 months. Almost 45 years, from 1947, March 1947, till 1991, December. So the Cold War lasted generations, almost 45 years, almost 3 generations. And of course, furthermore, the Kashmir situation in India, Pakistan. And on the horizon, the Republic of China, known as the Taiwan, the island of Taiwan, and the People's Republic of China. Both have, in their official names, both have China. ROC, Republic of China, is Taiwan. People's Republic of China is mainland China, the 1.4 billion population. But that conflict dates from the 20th century also, from the 20th century. And furthermore, India and Pakistan, when Pakistan and India were under the British, and Bangladesh also, they were under the British Empire of India, the British Empire which ruled India until 1947, until partition, and then Pakistan split. And at one point in the history of the 20th century, Bangladesh split from Pakistan. So that's from the 20th century. And the region of Kashmir is disputed, right? India, Pakistan, part of in Afghanistan, and even part in Bangladesh, and part of China, right? So there's an intermingling there. So there's a disputed parts of Kashmir, which is disputed between Pakistan and India. And now with the terrorist attack, Panglam terrorist attack, there's again a reignition of that conflict possibility on the horizon. Well, hopefully not a major conflict, but it's a possibility, even a nuclear one, because Pakistan has nuclear weapons and India has nuclear weapons. They're both nuclear armed powers. They got nuclear weapons in the 60s and 70s, in the 60s and 70s. And ICBM rockets, intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Of course, United States was first, the Soviet Union was second, and then of course you had China and India, Pakistan, and North Korea. But in the Americas is the United States only. The Brazil doesn't have. Brazil doesn't have. Some say that Brazil has. Some say Brazil, but no, Brazil doesn't have nuclear weapons officially. Brazil doesn't have. France, England, France. Of course, France and England came fourth and fifth, and third and fourth. Then China was fifth. Germany doesn't have, of course. They would have had. They have the capabilities, but Germany doesn't have because of their history of the First and Second World War and the agreements which they made just now recently last year, and in the past when the Russia Ukraine they just changed so that they're rearming. Germany is rearming, remilitarization in Germany, which was under international law and the agreements, Geneva and other international agreements where Germany was not allowed to kind of rearm by the international community. And after the union of the East and the West in the 1991, they were still under a lot of international pressure, from the U.S. and other countries because of the history of Germany from World War One and World War Two, not to rearm. But now that changed with the Russia invasion of Ukraine, and that has changed with the European Union as well. Of course, Germany is part of NATO, but Ukraine is not part of NATO. And today, of course, from a geopolitical perspective, from the NATO complex, from the NATO perspective, because we're part of NATO, Canada is part of NATO, and Sweden was the last one to join. There's an interesting event happening in Romania. Romania is having an election today, and supposedly a pro-Trump election. Well, I guess I have to study some more, because me being a Canadian, Quebec, and North American, I focus on the North American centric, but also from North America, I expanded to NATO and then the world. So as much as I can pronounce myself on the conflicts in the Middle East, Israel, Hamas, Pakistan, Kashmir, India, or Europe, I'm a North American collective. And in the geopolitical sense, my theories and protocols and initiatives are for the North American collective, but furthermore, from North America, it's NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the NATO organization founded after the Second World War, and then a world citizen, because I try to be a world citizen for world peace. But fundamentally, I'm a North American, so as much as I can analyze and pronounce myself, I mostly take a more neutral perspective in the conflicts and wishing for a peaceful resolution, because conflict resolution is going to be on Mount Royal, as we move towards the North American centric fusion of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom, which is my call to all. Pledge your allegiance, legions to our family. Pledge your allegiance, legions to our family, for the North American collective, the fusion thereof. And of course, NATO now sees the elections in Romania, and of course the elections were canceled because supposedly of Russian interference, from Russia. It never happened in the history post the communist socialist era, where Romania was part of Warsaw Pact, and Hungary and other countries that are now part of NATO were part of the Warsaw Pact, which happened after 1947, and of course it stayed until about 1991, when the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And of course there were socialist communist republics, Romania and Yugoslavia, now after in the 90s split into several countries, Croatia and Serbia and other countries. Bulgaria was also communist socialist. It was part of the what was known as the Warsaw Pact. So since I specialize in geopolitics of the 20th century, you have to consider the Warsaw Pact and the history, because there's still generations which kind of look at that era as a very good era. Some people still miss socialism, communist a lot. There has been in Eastern Europe, there has been a lot of studies being done and votes, and supposedly in one point there's of like 44% of the population which kind of looked with nostalgia at that period in time, where they say that socialism, communism was a better system than today, because the middle class seemed to have disappeared, and there seems to be a concentration of ownership of the means of production, if that's what we want to term it in such a way, or the stock market, because stock market, having a stock is basically having ownership in a company. Myself, financially stressed, $10,000 in debt, but I got the most kisses, trillions of kisses. Everybody willing and loving to get some trillions of kisses, trillions of kisses. I got 718 trillions of kisses, and by those kisses, I laid the foundations for the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom. And I play defense, defense, defense. I live in a World War III mode since October, November 2019, when I predicted what's happening now. And I am hyper vigilant. I don't like violence, but I am hyper vigilant because of my own trauma and being attacked by surprise the years and years ago. Fell, hit my head, and had a this that was bloodied up, bloodied up, bloodied up, and I have plenty of scars on my body, and I discuss my scars in my videos. And but I'm pretty much joyous, happy. I love to see people working out, training, and I love to match make, and I love when I see people hugging and holding hands and stuff like that. It gives me some hope, some joy, because hopefully somebody making love today in the free world. Otherwise, what are we fighting to save for? Wall Street got their money. They got their money, they got their bills, they got their pay. So it's rock and roll. Let somebody else eat. Give some charity. It's not being totally selfless, altruistic. I'm not. I'm not. I don't make pretense. I would love to afford a massage therapy session, but millionaires, billionaires, Wall Street finance the public workers who change the aqueducts, those who pick up the garbage, the sanitation workers who pick up the garbage, the compost, the recycling, finance them a good massage therapy session also. And also the nurses in the public, the nurses and the doctors, the firefighters, finance them a massage therapy session. They deserve it and earn it more than yours truly, artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical, theoretical, analyst, and theorist, and mystic, and right here in this underground room, certain temple, financially stressed artist, athlete. So back to geopolitics. I'm back to me as an independent geopolitical, theoretical, analyst, and theorist, who's not perfect, far from it, but who has tries to be selfish, and I love to volunteer and all that, encourage volunteering, and I need volunteers myself for my dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, especially when it comes to laying the foundations for the dragon army, complementary covenant to the DGA dancing goddess army, for the environment, to dance and clean the environment, and environmental education for the DGA. I love to dance, and I can dance for hours, get that dragon, rainbow dragon is aka priestess Hannah, priestess HNH, still Adrian Hannah Dragon. Officially got the money to change my name officially, but it's something that I'm working on, because I don't have the money to officially change my name, but it took blood, sweat, and tears, and thousands of marching steps, push-ups, and even last week I marched. I go to my second home around about the island of Montreal. It's a big island, 2.5 million people, to my second home, Mount Royal at the Belvedere, and then come back. And even last week I marched more than all the generals of NATO combined. And during COVID, I auctioned those old boots, of which I marched in them more than 45 months, and they're worn out, torn. Those I got auctioned for a billion, 1 billion, to give 50% to my anonymous friend and start. The first thing I want to build, I will to build, is the Forgotten Goddess, GODDSS Temple. Then the North American People's Imperial Coliseum, to have sports in perpetuity on the Canadian-US border. Then the pyramid, scarlet, crimson, scarlet, the scarlet and crimson, the pyramid, scarlet, crimson. And the scarlet and crimson are shades of red, like this color is scarlet, and the pyramid, house of the dragon, and of course to build the Rainbow People's Palace, for my fellow LGBTQ community and neurodivergent community, and that's why yours truly wills to build, and that's how we gotta go on those things to build, and that's how we gotta join together. Canadian, United States construction workers gotta put something on the table for the construction workers, more than rock and roll, because it takes that sweat, that brains, and that muscle on those cranes. So gonna put some feet washing some feet, or massaging, and more than blah blah blah, because what that's, it's it maybe this is an Aspie thing, it's just blah blah blah. Sometimes, it's philosophy and theory has to be put into action, just like my total mobile defense theory. When I add the S to the four letters of the acronym, it becomes a system, and that's what I'm calling for the Operation Northern Scorpio. Canada, United States joined, and Mexico, even Mexico to be interjected. Operation Northern Scorpio, and my total mobile defense theory, which when we add the fourth to the fourth letter, we add the fifth as an acronym. The total mobile defense theory system, I cannot overly discuss because it's national security for the North American Collective, national security sensitive. So it's something that I cannot provide more details than the general manner of the acronym, which is North American centric. Part of my call for the Operation Northern Scorpio to be implemented across the North American Civilizational Collective. And right here I am, rock and roll, just a piece of dust, but I have lust. I'm not perfect, far from it. I love a little bit of that rock and roll and dancing and fitness. And back to the geopolitics of today, regardless of other considerations as Quebecers, Canadians, and North Americans, our main geopolitical interest is to have the best, most cordial relations in military, production, and economics and finance and cultural, to have the best relations ever with each other. In terms of geopolitics, that is our number one geopolitical interest, to have the best, most cordial, friendly, diplomatic relations in the economy, in finance, in art, in military, whatever the case may be, in all aspects. As Canadians, that's it, Uncle Carney, that has to be a yes, because that's a constant, just like the pi number in mathematics, the 3.14. In geopolitics, that is our best and our number one priority as Quebecers, Canadians, as Canadians, Quebecers, to have the best, most possible, best economic, financial, commercial, military relations with the United States, and vice versa for the United States is the same. So it's vice versa. That is our number one priority in terms of geopolitics, to have the best, most cordial, friendly military relations with each other in terms of geopolitics. In terms of the geopolitical arena, in terms of the geopolitical realities, is to have the best relations with each other. That is what it is. There's no other yes, no, and maybe. That is a constant. So that's it. That's all for that. So back to the NORAD, a NATO complex. NATO, and of course, is the military alliance. And now there's elections in Romania. So those elections were canceled last year in December, I believe. December, they were canceled. So that by the Supreme Court. After I know a little bit about it. I don't know too much in details, but it affects the NATO complex. So us Canadians, as we're part of NATO, what happens in NATO countries also reverberates and has our own actions, our own institutions, our own organizations, which are part of this military alliance known as NATO. So me, as a geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, is the North American collective, North American civilization primary focus, and then expanded to NATO, and then of course to the world, because I will for world peace, but we still have a lot of things to reconcile and resolve. And fourth dimension, I guess, to colonize the outer space. Let's go. Public-private partnership. Give me 300 choppers, 300 helicopters. Canada, United States joint, and 300 big new trucks. Public-private partnership bill for SSD, security, service, and defense, for the implementation of the Operation Northern Scorpio, based on my total mobile defense theory. TM, total mobile DT, total mobile defense theory, TMDT, total mobile defense theory. And when we add a fifth dimension, is the S for the system, And when it becomes a system, this is national security sensitive, so I can only discuss it with, of course, Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense and Ministers of Security of all security services and Canadian Armed Forces, CAF, and of course the RCMP under CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and of course Big Hegset, and it's going to be discussed from the mountain thereof, the total mobile defense theory, and that's this theory. And when we add the fifth, it's an S, it's a system. That means that my theory is put into action, into practice. And it includes my workout, the Dragon Army workout, my General War integrated whole body training system, of which I've done more than 372. So of course the elections in Romania, what's happening now, what's going to be the outcome, is going to reverberate in the NATO complex. So us, Canada, due to the fact that we're part of NATO, we have to be sensitive to elections in NATO countries, to elections, to other developments, policies, and changes in the NATO complex. But my dream is fundamentally for the North American collective, for North America, the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, the public-private partnership, and of course, expanded NATO-centric, because NATO is, of course, our military alliance. So it's interesting that the elections were canceled because, of course, there were supposedly outside interference, as we have seen in the past during COVID, election interference in Canada. we are open. And I've studied this and I've learned this geopolitics, and I've written, of course, several theoretical papers after 2017 when I have to retrieve them in several USB keys and written by hand or by computer typed in USB keys, but I can dictate them orally because I pretty much have them in my brain, in my neurodivergent brain. And of course, one of the theoretical papers is the called has a title sometimes such as this. It was the initiatives, the public-private partnership and initiative for the public-private partnership and citizen integrated for the peaceful reconciliation with non-NATO member diaspora communities, for the peaceful reconciliation with non-NATO diaspora communities, for the peaceful reconciliation with non-NATO diaspora communities. It was a theoretical, philosophical, academic. It was mostly academic, philosophical, intellectual. I started writing it, I believe, in 2017, right around December when I got out of that depression, and I written about 3.5 years on it, and until about 2020 when I got hit by COVID. So about 3.5 years, pretty much 3.5 years, around about. Then I have to find it and revise it. It was something about several initiatives, public-private partnership and citizen integrated initiatives, for us to have reconciliation and several initiatives to reconcile peacefully with non-NATO member diaspora communities. It was more initiatives for peaceful reconciliation with non-NATO country diaspora communities, which we're part of NATO, and Sweden is the other member, which has to do with, of course, military and security matters. We have seen that we're vulnerable to espionage and sabotage. Espionage and sabotage. We're open to sabotage and espionage, myself included. We're open for sabotage and espionage. That's something which we are pretty much on the vulnerability side for such things, such as, of course, the espionage and sabotage, and even furthermore, since we got involved with several communities and several organizations, and we partook in providing military weaponry and equipment, not just financial or humanitarian aid, and so that kind of opened up for more vulnerabilities from very powerful nation states which have solidified their alliance mainly in the BRICS and the China Russia alliance, the Russia China alliance, and they have fortified their military, economic, financial alliance in the past 3.5 years. And they have, of course, mm, solidified furthermore their military, financial, political alliance, Russia and China, and the expansion and BRICS expanding and furthermore solidifying their alliance is something which has to be taken into consideration from a geopolitical perspective, from a NORAD NATO perspective, from a North American centric perspective. And furthermore, the world has changed not only because of the invasion of Russia, Ukraine, the reignition of the conflict in the Middle East, possibilities now for another conflict in India and Pakistan and Taiwan and China, and even instability in the Americas, Central America. And you know, I am somebody who I don't do drugs myself. I don't do drugs, but here cannabis, marijuana is legal. But I am generally for legalizing cocaine. For legalizing cocaine, it has to be standardized and sanitized and standardized, so that not the poisons such as fentanyl, because fentanyl is not really a recreational drug. I do not consider. I don't. I never tried it. I never did it myself. I don't consider it a recreational drug. It doesn't seem to be a recreational drug, such as we have the legalization of cannabis and marijuana. And there's so much legal cannabis and marijuana in Canada of so much variety. I don't smoke myself. I still have from years ago. Haven't touched it in months, but it's very rare. But it's legal in Canada, and there's so much variety. So that you can do that legal. So, but back to the North American centric philosophies, and my philosophies, of course, are for the North American Collective to implement the Trinity of theories, the CIT Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT Debt Refusion Theory, and the Democratic Fusion Theory. So now I'm going to discuss the Debt Refusion Theory, which, of course, we're at a point of emergency where we have to implement it. But before that, I just want to continue saying the thought about the North American Collective, that primarily, again, our main geopolitical interest from a Canadian perspective is to have the best, most cordial economic, financial, commercial, military, cultural, sports relations with the United States, and vice versa for the United States. It's reciprocal. It has to be reciprocal. It's vice versa. From the perspective of the United States, is to have the best, most cordial relations with Canada as well. Because we got coast to coast, ocean to ocean. And my brothers and sisters, fellow Canadians, I'm going to sing the song The king is absent. The king is absent. The king is absent is gonna maybe visit Canada when the inauguration is gonna be of Mark Carney and whatever happens, but then it's gonna be gone. So the king is absent. It's time to liberate ourselves from the king in the 21st century, and it's time for the republic, and it's time for the dream, the public-private partnership, the CIT, citizen integration theory, the DRT, debt fusion theory, and democratic fusion theory, and it's time for the SSD, security service and defense, 21st century public-private partnership, call to all willingly living for the dragon army, and the dancing goddess army, the DGA dancing goddess army, which is fundamental for the North American integrated dance league, to clean the environment for environmental education and cleaning, and to clean the environment, the mountains, the valleys, and to, of course, build. We got to build 44 tunnels across the North American collective ASAP, and that's part of course, building them with the help of the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act. My call to for the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act. For as much as I sing rock and roll, for the boys and girls in blue, because nobody is perfect. That includes that me and you. I gotta sing that rock and roll for my brothers and sisters who do their second chances, who take their second chances. You know, my brothers and sisters who lost their liberty and freedom to take their second chances, and turn your life around, because I don't know if I would have stayed where I used to live. I would have probably been dead or in jail, and I spent many years with struggling, suffered, depressed, suicidal, one foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries, and roamed isolated alone. And here I am, happy, joyous, and pretty much rents paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee. And in terms of geopolitics, my protocols, initiatives for the North American Collective are pretty much on the top, creme de la creme, especially the DRT, debt refusion theory. I'm going to discuss it now quickly because I'm on the subject. The DRT, debt refusion theory, stands for D, debt, R, refusion, T for theory. And of course, inside my DRT, debt refusion theory is integrated. In it is integrated monetary integration theory. What's monetary integration theory? Is the financial theory, which of course the Europeans implemented in the European Union with the destruction of the old central banks. The Germans destroyed their old central national banks in the 20th century. And of course, the Italians also destroyed their own national central banks in the 20th century. The French, the Italy, France, Germany, they destroyed their national central bank, and they created a new central bank, the ECB, the European Central Bank, back in the 20th century. So I'm calling for that, of course, to be established in the 21st century. The new North American Collective for Canada and United States joined. The DRT has to be implemented simultaneously. Both our public and private finances are pretty much aligned, and of course we have reached a critical point of contention where we are on the verge of a public financial collapse. We're on the verge of a public financial collapse. Do you realize that we are on the verge of a public financial collapse? I'm saying that because last year, the statement that I just made, that we Canadians, Canada, the public financial system of Canada is on the verge of a collapse on the horizon. Uncle Carney is worked in banking, finance, knows banking, finance more than I know. Probably I know more geopolitics than Uncle Carney does, or Grandpa Trump, or Uncle Legault. But of course, I know my geopolitics, and it comes that the DRT paradoxically comes out of me having Asperger's and knowing geopolitics. The debt refusion theory you have to implement, because we have paid 46.5 billion interest last year. We paid 46.5 billion in interest. 46.5 billion. Compute that number, a billion having 9 zeros. That is 46,000 million. And of course, in 2020, 2021, the number was 20.3 billion. 20.3 double was 40.6. 40.6. That would have been double. But yes, due to COVID, and I had COVID right in this room of Sun Temple in February 2020. COVID for me was like death, pestilence, and disease. Like death, pestilence, and disease. Like death, pestilence, and disease. Death, pestilence, and disease. Please. I know it sounds like a hardcore death trash rock metal song, but that's how I felt right here in this room of Sun Temple. I thought that was my last chapter, February 2020, and I survived it. I got 3 vaccines, and I work out, train, exercise since 2017, and paradoxically, my DRT, debt refusion theory, is of course the solution for what has to be implemented across the North American Collective, the North American Civilizational Complex, Canada, United States. So I'm going to explain it as much as I can. The DRT, debt refusion theory, for the creation of the Universal Exchange Unit. So in my DRT, debt refusion theory is integrated in it. Monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is integrated in my DRT, debt refusion theory. So of course we're going to have to take all the public and the private debt, and that's what we're going to have to be doing. Because last year we paid 46.5 billion in interest. You realize that the amount of interest which we paid is not sustainable because our economy didn't double. And just like in the parallel mathematical financial principle of an individual, just like if an individual, of course, debt, of course, more than doubles the payments. If it goes from 156 to 333, because 156 double is 312, of course, 333 is more than double. So that's what happened with the public debt. It went, of course, from 20.3 billion double, that would have been 40.6. So it went, of course, to 300 to 46.5 billion. The public, just the interest on the public debt has more than doubled. Just the interest on the public debt has more than doubled. Just the interest on the public debt has more than doubled. So that is the amount, of course, which we have paid on the public debt. So you realize that this amount cannot be sustainable, and that's where the emergency lies in. There's no negotiation with this. The DRT or something very similar has to be implemented. Paradoxically, my debt refusion theory has to be implemented due to the fact of how much interest we pay on the public debt last year. What are we going to cut, Mr. Carney, Uncle Carney? Because we have to cut. Because, of course, the realization is, of course, just like an individual citizen who has to pay 100, who, let's say, whatever the citizen name is, Citizen X, let's say, if the Citizen X, the amount of interest paid goes from 156 to 333, that's more than double, because 156 double is 312. So one has to cut and reduce the spending. Obviously, it cannot be sustained unless the salary doubles. The salaries have increased from 5 years, from February 2020 to this year, by 4.4% about. That is the amount which, of course, has increased. That's not a lot. That is not a lot. So obviously, one has to reduce the budgeted spending. What are you maybe going to have to cut? The smoking of cigarettes, the drinking of wine, the going out to the parties, the Netflix, the Disney, whatever. You have to reduce the budget. So that same mathematical financial principle applies to the public debt, because our GDP didn't double, and it takes decades and decades and decades for the GDP to double. So that is the paradox. So my DRT theory includes monetary integration theory. There's no other way out of this. It can happen tomorrow, Monday. Breaking news: after the taxes have been filed and the new financial fiscal season comes in, that there's a public financial emergency, public financial collapse. What are we going to cut, Uncle Carney? The garbage collection, the sanitation, the healthcare, the security, the prisons, the police, the RCMP. Something has to be cut and reduced. There's no way out of this. You can argue all you want, but there's no way. My DRT theory is the way, or something very similar, which resembles my DRT theory, which I'm going to explain in a general manner. So we're going to, and this applies to my brothers and sisters in the United States. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt. My debt, your debt, my debt is $10,000. We're going to take my debt, your debt, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to convert it into US dollars, Canadian public and private debt. We're going to add all the public and the private debt of Canada with the United States debt. All this number, convert the Canadian public private debt, including my 10,000 to US dollars. All this number, we're going to add it up. This number is going to be the initial money supply for a new Bank of North America, a central bank in North America. We're going to issue a new currency called the UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot unit. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot unit. The UE. Because that's what money serves as a function to buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot unit. But this UE universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10%, 10%. Thereafter, it's not going to be able to be more than 10%. It can be 3.33, 7.18, 9.3, and 4.18, 3.33, 1.56. That's what it is going to be, below 10%. And that's what it's going to be, below 10%. It can be 3.33, 1.56, 7.18, 9.3, 1.56. It can be 4.18, 6.1, whatever the case may be. That's what it's going to be, below 10% by maximum. That's going to be the new financial maximum, which is going to be, of course, implementation thereof. We have to implement this on an emergency that we have to face now today. So that's what we're going to be. And that's what we're going to be doing. The DRT, we have to be implementing Canada, United States, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, to create the UE to build those 44 tunnels. With that money, we're going to be able to mass finance citizens finance, the citizens to work out, train, exercise. We're going to be able to mass finance the building construction of the 44 tunnels, and we're going to be able to finance, of course, the building of the aqueducts, the roads, the highways. That's why we're going to be able to finance the building thereof of the roads, the aqueducts. We're going to be able to mass finance the building of the 44 tunnels inspired by the Cheyenne Mountain Complex and by the Montreal Underground Village. And of course, we're going to stack them with food. In case of a thermonuclear war, we have to build those 44 tunnels, and we're going to also implement it with the North American Criminal Rehabilitation Act to put my brothers and sisters for some work and give them amnesty, give them some work to build those, have the privilege and the honor to build those 44 tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war outside of the North American center, because it's possible that a nuclear war begins any second, any minute, any day. So we're going to mass finance citizens fitness, mass finance people to work out, train, exercise, mass finance tourism across the 63. We're going to get rid of the border. We're going to do a great census. We're going to see everybody who's been living in since 2020 February, since COVID began, since 2019, since 2017, since 2015, and be eligible to serve in the DGA, Dancing Goddess Army, and in the Dragon Army, the North American Integrated Security Service and Defense new public-private partnership institution, parallel complementary to the Dancing Goddess Army. We're going to lay the foundations financing those two complementary covenants. We're going to rebuild the North American inner urban cities. We're going to rebuild together the ghettos of North America. We're going to rebuild the ghettos, the North American inner urban cities. We're going to do a lot of painting, a lot of red, blue, rainbow paints all across the North American collective, and rebuild the North American the North American inner urban cities. And there's, even in my neighborhood, a lot of rebuilding to be done. So we're going to do lots of good with that money. We're going to put it to some public-private partnership causes for the North American collective. Rebuild the bridges, the aqueducts, go public works, go. So we're going to mass finance, mass public works across North America, and we're going to build the North American People's Imperial Coliseum for sports in perpetuities, 24/7 for sports in perpetuities. And that's what we're going to do for sports in perpetuities. And that's what we're going to be doing on the Canadian-US border, to be 11 times bigger than where the Blackout Ball, aka Harbor Ball, now is known as the Caesar Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. Before that was, of course, known as the Mercedes-Benz Super Bowl, and that's what it's going to be like, and that's what we're going to be doing, and that's what we're going to be initiating the Forgotten Goddess Temple with it, and the Pyramid House of the Dragon Scarlet Rainbow, and the People's Imperial Coliseum for it. Sportis in perpetuitis, and we're gonna do lots of good with that money. Again, the DRT, debt refusion treaty, there's no way out of this, my brothers and sisters. You can argue all you want, but that is fundamentally what it is. And the DRT, debt refusion treaty, for the creation of the UE, and we're gonna do lots of good, mass finance the building 44 tunnels and stack them with food in case of a thermonuclear war. And we're going to be doing a lot of good with that money. We're going to rebuilding the infrastructure, the architecture, mass finance citizens tourism across the 50 states plus 10 territories plus 10 provinces plus 3 territories, 63 total, 63. And even Mexico Mexico can join, and other nations can join along, as we Canada, United States simultaneously first, and then we rock and roll. So I'm gonna go get some seconds. For the tea, and then we're gonna switch a little bit of that French and finalize a little bit of that rock and roll. Butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, those doing some deliveries of food, those in the fast food. I cannot forget those in the fast food. Flipping some burgers. Give them a raise, and there's a BNS finance a little bit of that good, and support the DRT, pledge your allegiance. Let's go, brother citizen Bill Gates. We're gonna get doing that on the love side of things, and that's what we're gonna get doing for now, for today. It has to be implemented, and that's what we're gonna be doing now. And we're gonna get those seconds for the tea, and we're gonna switch a little bit to that French when we come back. Please, like you never, with consent, hug like you never hugged before, today, and that's what we're gonna get doing today. And please hug like you never hugged before with consent. Pledge your allegiance to our family, and being reborn with a new name. Keep it out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing. Adrian Hanna Dragon. Hope you have an understanding. Otherwise, it'll be pestilence. Keep my holy sacred name out of your mouth, Adrian Hanna Dragon. If it's not for a blessing, hope you have an understanding. Adrian Hanna Dragon, reborn during COVID. 93 wannabe Telemite here on the sun, shining and sets in the night. Starlight, yours truly, Rainbow Dragon, aka Priestess, Hanna Priestess. H got trillions of kisses anybody wants, may I be avenged 11-fold, it'll be no like rock and roll. May I be avenged 11-fold, it'll be rock and roll. I owe nobody nada, zero, pledge your allegiance, I got kisses. I owe nobody zero nada. My rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee, and got some of this food. Grateful, thankful for the food farmers. Thank you, farmers, food producers, those bakers doing some bagels, in the fast food, truckers on the road. Those are going to pick up the garbage tomorrow. The garbage, the collection of the recycling, the garbage, the compost, those builders on the cranes building, construction workers, those truckers on the road, those train conductors, thinking about them coast to coast, sending some loving and some rock and roll for the workers who made less than 44,000 last year. I survived on less than 11,000. Survived on less than 11,000 last year. I survived on less than 11,000. Can you imagine that? So, gonna go get a second cup of tea for that French, because we la belle province. Oh, see, Aspie. I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend who put up, tolerated, understood, and even to a certain extent appreciated. Because I got a book last year which I read, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome, and it can be tough because sometimes Aspies were part of the tiny minority, 0.44%. It's just certain things we don't get. We don't understand. We know our special interests inside out. We master them. We're super good. Me, rock and roll, geopolitics, sports, fitness, dancing is my favorite sport. But other things just are so more difficult, and I require certain support, understanding. And I gotta recommend that book, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. I read it a few times and focused on more paragraphs and more chapters of it than others, but definitely a good book. So definitely further understanding my condition, and worked on it since the past 44, almost 45 months now, because I've been diagnosed by several people and doctors for the more than 7 years. And 7 years I've been told I have Asperger's. I said no, until finally in the past 45 months or so. So to French, because we made the great linguistic compromise of the French language, so rock and roll in French. French. Bienvenue dans la grotte du dragon arc-en-ciel. Je vous encourage, Québécois, à faire de la danse. Votre Aspie artiste dragon arc-en-ciel. Je vais vous commencer avec la gratitude, comme toujours. Hop! Et avec du thé à menthe, sans caféine. Sans caféine. Et bien sûr, merci pour le don. C'est des croûtons de porc, puis avec bien sûr des baguettes, comment on appelle, bien sûr, avec de la laitue romaine que je vais manger. Donc, en vous encourageant à faire de l'exercice ce dimanche, du sabbat, prêter allégeance Légion. Je vais chanter pour les camionneurs, les travailleurs publics qui ramassent les poubelles demain, puis le recyclage, puis qui changent les aqueducs de la belle province. Ça prend du muscle et puis du cerveau. Puis vous savez que c'est le rock&roll, la géopolitique, puis l'entraînement physique sur la danse, que votre dragon arc-en-ciel, Aspie, artiste, philosophe, puis androgyne pansexuel là, qui vous encourage à faire, puis garder les protocoles de santé dans le public, à vous être désinfectant les mains pour les car à cause qu'il y a des germes, des microbes et des bactéries. Quand on y va puis on touche les claviers, mettons de la banque, du clavier bancaire, c'est possible que vous prenez des bactéries des autres personnes, des autres citoyens, parce qu'il faut qu'on fasse un effort individuel aussi de garder les protocoles. Je garde les protocoles hygiéniques de la COVID. Je me suis fait vacciner 3 fois. Puis ici, j'ai eu la COVID le février 2020, j'ai eu la COVID directement ici dans mon sous-sol, mon temple. J'ai survécu la COVID plus que 5 ans. Fait que je dois célébrer ça encore une fois. Mais ayant survécu la COVID, je pensais que c'était mon dernier chapitre. Je pensais que j'allais mourir, mais j'ai survécu ça comme j'ai survécu à avoir la dépression, être suicidaire en 2017. J'ai traversé le Canada, puis ça m'a complètement changé ma vie en 2017, en août, puis en septembre, puis en août, puis en septembre, j'ai traversé le Canada, où je suis allé à Vancouver, en Colombie-Britannique, puis en septembre, à Halifax, en Nouvelle-Écosse. Ça a fait comme une illumination, j'ai eu comme un réveil, j'ai dit, waouh, tellement un gros pays, juste le Québec à traverser, puis à voir, puis à faire au Canada. Fait que j'ai eu comme un réveil quand je suis allé à Banff. Tu sais, les montagnes à Banff, en Alberta, c'était comme waouh, c'était vraiment divin. Puis ça m'a tout changé ma vie. Depuis ce temps-là, j'ai commencé à m'entraîner. J'ai perdu entre 80 et 93 livres. J'ai créé mon propre système d'entraînement physique. Puis j'ai l'Asperger, j'ai vu avec cette condition de neurodivergence. C'est pas une maladie mentale. Il y a encore beaucoup de conditions vis-à-vis. C'est quoi l'Asperger? C'est que c'est l'autisme fonctionnel, aussi connu comme l'Asperger. C'est notre cerveau, il est différent. Il y a comme une mutation du cerveau. Fait que ça fait qu'on a de la misère avec certaines choses, des protocoles, des normes de la société, les interactions sociales. C'est plus difficile, ça vient pas vite, tu sais, des fois. On a de la misère, on ne comprend pas des choses, mais on est bon dans les intérêts spéciaux. Les intérêts spéciaux, moi-même, c'est la géopolitique, l'entraînement physique, et bien sûr, le rock'n'roll, que je compose des chansons de rock'n'roll, bien sûr, au quotidien, bien sûr. Quotidiennement, j'en compose. Puis je dis que ma renaissance ici, bien sûr, que je suis comme mort de la COVID. J'étais mort avant. Je vis avec mes cicatrices, le trompe. Je me suis fait attaquer par surprise dans le métro de Montréal. Je suis tombé, je connais ma tête. Puis je suis tombé, je connais ma tête. J'avais le bras disloqué, le bras droit disloqué. Puis bien sûr, je suis allé à l'hôpital juif. M'ont replacé le bras. Puis je dois aller voir dans les archives. Puis bien sûr, que j'étais mis sur des médicaments, j'ai eu comme un coma. Puis avant ça, ma vie avant ça, où j'habitais avant, il y avait beaucoup de moisissures, j'ai la misère un peu à me souvenir de ma vie avant 9, 10, 11 ans. Là, puis je m'en souviens juste les dernières années, bien comme il le faut. Là, puis tout le travail que j'ai fait, surtout en géopolitique, je retourne à la géopolitique parce que c'est mon intérêt spécial. Puis je suis moi-même, pas seulement un artiste, philosophe, mais un analyste et théoricien en géopolitique. Fait que, là, dans la géopolitique, il faut dire que mes analyses et théories sont principalement pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, qu'est-ce que j'appelle le grand collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, où qu'on a fait le grand compromis de la langue du français, bien sûr, qu'on avait fait le grand compromis linguistique, dont le français, bien sûr. Qu'est-ce qu'on a fait? Le grand compromis linguistique, c'est le français, pour avoir la continuité de la paix et l'harmonie dans le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord. Puis bien sûr, maintenant, on vit des temps difficiles avec les tarifs, puis je dois bien sûr dire que depuis 2018, je fais appel à Donald Trump pour me combattre dans un combat de boxe. Je dois aussi envoyer la gratitude, puis dire merci pour les gants de boxe rouges que je vends pour 1 million, pour donner la moitié à mon ami anonyme qui n'a pas été mon ami à cause de l'argent, mais qui m'a donné ces gants rouges avec lesquels j'ai fait beaucoup d'entraînement. Vous pouvez voir des centaines de vidéos d'entraînement physique, de rock-and-roll, de danse, de votre dragon arc-en-ciel, aussi connu comme Adrien le Québécois, dans cette grotte androgyne, monsieur, madame, monsieur. Puis ici, bon, bien sûr, que je sois moi-même, c'est centriste. Mon centriste, il est universel, révolutionnaire, puis il est relié, fondamentalement intégré avec ma trinité de théories, la théorie d'intégration citoyenne, la théorie de la refusion de la dette et la théorie de la fusion démocratique. Pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, puis pour la création de 2 institutions de partenariat public-privé, soit l'armée du dragon, que j'envisage, je visionne fonctionner juste pour la SSD et par le principe de la SSD. Sécurité, Service, Défense. SSD, c'est les acronymes. SSD, Sécurité, Service, Défense. Sécurité, Service, Défense. Puis, parallèle, complémentaire à l'armée de la déesse qui danse, ça soit cette armée du dragon, puis l'armée de la déesse qui danse, soit la Ligue de danse de l'Amérique du Nord pour la danse, parce que j'adore danser, c'est mon sport préféré, bien sûr. La prêtresse Anne, prêtresse, puis je veux construire le temple de la déesse oubliée avec le palais du peuple, le Colisée du peuple de l'Amérique du Nord sur la frontière du Canada et des États-Unis pour avoir des activités sportives, du sport 24/24, puis bien sûr la pyramide, rouge écarlate, écarlate c'est rouge, une petite maison pyramide du dragon, la maison du dragon, la pyramide, puis parallèlement et vis-à-vis au palais du peuple arc-en-ciel pour les neurodivergents et ma communauté LGBTQ parce que je suis pansexuel, je fais partie de la communauté des neurodivergents ainsi que la communauté de membres de la LGBTQ qu'on appelle la nation arc-en-ciel, soit bien sûr que je suis moi-même pansexuel qui inclut mes homosexualité puis bisexualité, donc je fais partie bien sûr. Puis on est 24/24, hein, Asperger's, Aspie, puis divers, puis soit gay ou homosexuel ou bisexuel ou pansexuel qui inclut être homosexuel, bisexuel. La pansexualité, ça englobe bien sûr. En tant qu'il faut que vous soyez adulte, par exemple, je vous carte. Vous venez me faire l'amour, femme, homme, homme, femme, noir, blanc, ben je vous carte. Hein. Je vous carte comme pour aller voir un club, dans un club, ou pour aller acheter du cannabis légal ou de la bière ou de l'alcool. Vous demandez, je vais vous carter comme dans, dans les sociétés des alcools ou comme dans la Société du cannabis du Québec, la SDQ, SQDC, Société du Québec du cannabis, SQDC, Société québécoise du cannabis. Bon, je l'ai dit dans la géopolitique, il faut que j'embarque dans la géopolitique, puis je dis bien sûr que principalement, fondamentalement, notre intérêt principal en tant que Québécois, Canadien, Canadien, Québécois, c'est d'avoir, puis il faut que je le dise à mon oncle Legault ainsi qu'à mon oncle Carney, en même temps que je me prononce que le roi est absent, le roi est absent, le roi est absent, le roi est absent, il va venir nous rendre visite dans 2 semaines, ben, c'est le temps pour la République. Je veux qu'on se débarrasse de ça, puis prêter allégeance, excuse-moi, le premier ministre que j'ai entendu, puis qui va prêter allégeance, là, serment allégeance au roi Charles et ses héritiers, ben non. Prêter allégeance aux 44 millions de Canadiens, là, c'est le temps pour la République, puis c'est le temps pour un centriste, c'est le temps pour la République. Le roi est absent, puis c'est le temps pour la théorie de la refusion de la dette, parce qu'on n'a pas le choix de faire l'implémentation de la TRD, ça c'est sûr et certain, avec à 100%, je dis ça. Bon, de retour à la géopolitique, il faut que nos chefs de la droite, du centre et de la gauche, notre intérêt principalement là, dans la géopolitique en tant que Québécois, Canadien, Canadien, Québécois, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations militaires, de sécurité, d'économie, puis de sport, puis de culture avec les États-Unis. C'est pas non, c'est pas peut-être, c'est oui. Ça, c'est en termes de la géopolitique. C'est mon intérêt spécial. Je suis moi-même un analyste et théoricien en géopolitique. Encore une fois, j'ai prévu la situation actuelle en 2019, en octobre. J'ai prévu qu'il y aura une conflagration internationale. Puis là, bien sûr, c'est possible qu'il y ait un autre conflit, l'Inde et le Pakistan sur l'horizon. La situation du Cachemire, le Cachemire, là, ça a été non résolu. C'est des conflits qui n'ont pas été capables d'avoir résolution du 20e siècle, combien, bien sûr, du 20e siècle, dans ces conflits, bien sûr, qui ont fait, bien sûr, dans ces conflits, qui n'ont pas eu de résolution au Moyen-Orient, en Europe, l'Ukraine et la Russie, c'est des conflits non résolus du 20e siècle, surtout de la période aussi connue comme la guerre froide. La guerre froide, ça a duré, bien sûr, plus que 44 ans, quasiment 45 ans, 44 ans et 9 mois, entre mars 1947 et 1991 en décembre. Fait que ça a duré, bien sûr, tellement longtemps, cette guerre froide-là, quasiment 3 générations, il faut tenir compte de ça. Puis bien sûr, le conflit du Cachemire, ça date d'après que l'Inde a déclaré son indépendance de l'Empire britannique en 1947. Avant ça, l'Inde, le Pakistan et le Bangladesh, c'était un pays. Ils se sont séparés après l'indépendance que Mahatma Gandhi, qui a fait bien sûr qui a déclaré l'indépendance de l'Inde. Mahatma Gandhi. Et bien sûr, il faut le dire en compte de la géopolitique, on a peut-être un autre conflit sur l'horizon, soit le Cachemire. L'Inde et le Pakistan, bien sûr que ça fasse, bien sûr, l'Inde et le Pakistan. C'est un conflit non résolu, bien sûr, qui a fait que c'est encore en train de se recommencer. Il y a eu une guerre en 1971, puis là, ils ont des armes nucléaires. Ils ont des bombes, des missiles nucléaires. Fait que c'est possible qu'il y ait un autre conflit. Bon. Mais, bien sûr, pour le dire de cette manière, bien sûr, qu'il soit de cette prudence, puis qu'il faut avoir la sagesse de la géopolitique, c'est que comme il faut le prononcer, il faut dire oui à cette prochaine phrase que je vais dire, cette vérité géopolitique. En termes du Canada, du Québec, Canadiens et Québécois, Québécois, Canadiens comme moi-même, et moi, en tant qu'individu neurodivergent, puis qui de la communauté LGBTQ, puis qui vit un stress financier, j'ai un 10 000 de dette, mais j'ai payé mon loyer. Je dois dire ma gratitude, j'ai payé mon loyer pour le mois de mai, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité, puis j'ai du café, puis j'ai du thé. Et bien sûr, pour le dire dans cette compte, bien sûr, pour le dire dans cette compte, pour le dire bien sûr que j'ai fait moi-même cette analyse, puis bien sûr, je suis un analyste et théoricien en géopolitique, québécois, canadien, nord-américain, puis mes intérêts sont pour le tant qu'individu du collectif, puis en tant pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, puis tous ceux qui viennent nous rejoindre, parce qu'on est une civilisation émergente, donc on a fait le grand compromis linguistique français. Pour avoir la continuité de la paix, on a dû faire ce grand compromis linguistique, mais moi-même, il faut que je fasse un effort. En tant qu'individu, si je ne le fais pas l'effort, hier, je suis allé faire des épiceries, je commençais à parler avec un étranger, il parlait français, puis j'ai dit, ben merci d'avoir fait un effort, parce que c'était un anglais. Fait il a quand même fait un effort de me parler en français. J'ai quand même fait un effort de répondre un peu quelque chose qui n'était pas clair en anglais. Fait que ça a été réciproque. Fait qu'il faut qu'en tant qu'individu, moi-même, je le fais. Si je ne le fais pas pour le français, mais il faut que je le fasse, puis il faut que je le fasse moi-même, un effort. Ça prend un effort individuel ainsi que collectif, du financement, de la culture, le lancement de la culture, de l'harmonie. Puis moi-même, c'est pas le rock-and-roll. Je suis loin d'être parfait moi-même, tu sais. Pour en faire bien sûr une synthèse, on a fait le grand compromis linguistique en tant que Québécois, Canadien, Nord-Américain. C'est chez nous, tu sais. Fait que je dois le faire moi-même pour avoir de l'harmonie puis la paix, des fois par l'action concrète aussi. L'Asperger's, il y a bien du monde qui pense que c'est une maladie mentale. C'est pas une maladie mentale, l'Asperger's, l'autisme monofonctionnel, c'est que notre cerveau est différent. Puis oui, dans certaines choses, j'ai de la misère moi-même, j'ai de la difficulté, je dois toujours bâtir des ponts. Il n'y a pas beaucoup d'Asperger's comme moi-même dans le monde. Je fais partie de cette petite minorité, hein. C'est moins d'1%, moins de la moitié d'un pourcentage. 0,44%, là, c'est pas beaucoup comme qui sont neurodivergents. Notre cerveau est différent. Fait que des fois, on a des caractéristiques, c'est pas des symptômes. Des symptômes, c'est pour une maladie mentale. Ces caractéristiques, c'est que peut-être on va répéter 2-3 fois la même chose. On a tendance, comme moi-même, c'est 24/24, l'analyse, la théorie en géopolitique, l'entraînement physique, puis la danse et le sport que je préfère le plus. La danse et le rock-and-roll. Cette trinité d'intérêts spéciaux, ça préoccupe mes journées au complet. Des fois, je passe des heures et des heures, des heures. J'oublie de faire d'autres choses. Je néglige de faire d'autres choses. Puis je fais des analyses en géopolitique. Puis des révisions, des analyses en géopolitique. Mais j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant en 2019 d'une manière générale. Puis là, bien sûr, avec l'Inde et le Pakistan, c'est encore un conflit du 20e siècle qui n'a pas eu de résolution. Le Cachemire, ça date du 20e siècle. Ce conflit territorial de territoire qui n'a pas été résolu complètement. Bon. Moi-même, il faut que je le fasse parce que si je ne le fais pas, pour le français, je dois contribuer au français. Puis à ce grand compromis de la langue française, linguistique qu'on a fait, il y a bien longtemps qu'on continue à faire, ça prend l'individu, puis ça prend le collectif. Qu'on continue avec l'harmonie et la paix, pour avoir la continuité de la paix. Fait que dans ce contexte de la géopolitique, puis l'erreur que Donald Trump a faite, c'est d'imposer des tarifs qui a été imposé la première fois en 2018, en octobre et au début de 2018, ça fait plus que 7 ans. Et bien sûr, depuis ce temps-là, je fais appel à Donald Trump pour me combattre dans un combat box sur la frontière canado-états-unienne, parce que c'est mieux qu'on fasse un grand recensement, un passeport commun, puis une monnaie commune, puis qu'on se fusionne par un partenariat public-privé. On n'a pas besoin de la frontière. C'est mieux qu'on se fasse pour la sécurité de côte à côte par les ports et les aéroports, les aéroports et les ports, les aéroports et les ports. C'est pour ça il faut qu'on fasse un passeport commun. On n'a pas besoin de la frontière. Un passeport commun, puis une entente qui est l'armée du dragon pour les nouveaux protocoles de 9.1 pour la SSS, SSD, Sécurité Service Défense, Sécurité Service Défense, pour les protocoles 9.1, la SSD, Sécurité Service Défense, puis en tant qu'analyste et théoricien en géopolitique qui a prévu la situation actuelle en 2019. C'est pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord parce qu'on est un collectif émergent. On a fait le grand compromis linguistique avec nos frères et sœurs noirs. C'est sûr que des fois, on a du racisme, on a de la discrimination. Il faut qu'on le fasse en tant qu'individu, tu sais, pour mettre sur la table quelque chose, pour faire des actions aussi. Peut-être c'est une caractéristique des Aspie, des Aspergers, à la place de juste des paroles puis de la philosophie. Nous, les Aspie, on aime ça, mettre des actions sur la table, tu sais, avec du rock-and-roll, mais quelque chose comme des câlins ou je sais pas, de l'argent, j'en ai pas. Moi-même, j'ai une crise financière, mais j'en ai pas pour contribuer de cette manière, tu sais. à d'autres qui en ont besoin, qui sont dans le besoin. Je vais faire du bénévolat, je vais faire ci puis ça. C'est d'une manière d'individu puis du collectif. Puis la chanson, c'est prêter allégeance à les gens, vous êtes famille. Mon rêve qui se manifeste comme le royaume de la déesse et du dragon qui danse est fondamentalement un appel à un partenariat public-privé à travers le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord. Donc on a fait le grand compromis, hein, il y a pas longtemps. C'est mieux qu'on se fusionne de la manière d'un partenariat public-privé. Puis c'est sûr que moi-même, je ne suis pas un partisan de Trump. Grand-père Trump, j'aimerais ça le combat dans un combat de boxe, puis qu'on bâtit sur la frontière Canada-États-Unis le Colisée du peuple impérial de l'Amérique du Nord pour avoir du sport in perpetuitis, du sport à perpétuité, du sport 24 sur 24, pour avoir l'événement, le premier événement d'inauguration, l'inaugurer avec moi, puis Donald Trump se battre dans un combat de boxe. Puis je veux bâtir le temple de la déesse qui danse, puis la pyramide, la maison du dragon écarlate. Écarlate, c'est rouge, 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 ma couleur préférée, puis le palais du peuple arc-en-ciel pour les neurodivergents, comme moi-même, puis pour ma communauté LGBTQ. C'est 4 bâtiments que je veux bâtir. C'est sûr que je dois mettre sur la table pour les travailleurs de construction, des lavages de pieds peut-être, des massages, du rock-and-roll, parce que c'est sûr que ça prend des cerveaux puis des muscles. Hein. Ça prend du cerveau puis des muscles, bâtir sur la grue puis du savoir-faire. Fait que moi, je contribue, qu'est-ce que moi je contribue, puis d'autres qui contribuent sur la table, qu'est-ce que vous contribuez, mais j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant en géopolitique. La géopolitique, c'est mon royaume, c'est mon domaine, c'est mon intérêt spécial, aussi connu comme intérêt obsessif, mais utiliser le mot obsessif, ça ne rend pas justice à qu'est-ce que c'est pour un citoyen qui est neurodivergent comme moi-même. C'est juste ces intérêts-là, ça préoccupe. Comme, pensez comme une application, comme notre cerveau, la majorité de notre énergie physique et du cerveau, ça se dirige vers ses intérêts spéciaux. Puis moi, c'est la géopolitique, le sport, l'entraînement physique, la danse, c'est le sport que je préfère, puis le rock-and-roll. Fait que cette trinité, ça préoccupe depuis des années, bien des années, avec une routine. Puis je fais des fois des heures super concentré, super dedans, super intense, quand je fais l'analyse des théories en géopolitique. Puis je prends beaucoup de fierté dans mes analyses en géopolitique, puis mes théories, bien sûr, sur la théorie d'intégration citoyenne, la théorie de la fusion démocratique, puis la théorie de la refusion de la dette. Cette trinité de théories que je fais appel pour l'implémentation pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, le Québec, le Canada, puis les États-Unis principalement, puis là, je peux dire pour l'OTAN, parce que c'est l'Amérique du Nord en tant qu'analyste, mais philosophie en géopolitique, c'est pour le collectif nord-américain ou le grand collectif de civilisation nord-américain, qui est un collectif émergent qui n'est pas tout à fait divorcé de l'Occident, mais il y a des distinctions. On a des distinctions avec l'Occident. On n'est pas divorcé de l'Occident, mais on a des distinctions. Puis bien sûr, tous ceux qui viennent nous rejoindre, puis après ça, c'est l'OTAN. Puis du point de vue de l'OTAN, une analyse en géopolitique, qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant? C'est bien sûr, la Roumanie fait partie de l'OTAN. C'est nos alliés qui font partie de l'OTAN, parce que le Canada, on fait partie de l'Organisation transatlantique du Nord. C'est une organisation militaire et de sécurité interne militaire. Puis bien sûr, la Suède vient de se rajouter. Puis il y a des élections, là, les gens vont voter. Puis l'année passée, ils ont annulé le vote. Il y a eu l'élection d'un président, puis la Cour suprême, pour la première fois, ils ont annulé le vote à cause qu'il y a eu supposément de l'interférence de la Russie. Et bien sûr, nous aussi, au Canada, on a eu bien, depuis la COVID en février 2020, on a eu bien des choses de l'interférence, de l'espionnage, puis on est vulnérable à l'espionnage, puis au sabotage, parce qu'on s'est fait des ennemis puissants à cause qu'on a pris certaines routes en géopolitique. Puis bien sûr, c'est pas juste de l'aide humanitaire qu'on a envoyée à l'externe, à des pays qui ne font pas partie de l'OTAN. Qui ne font pas partie de l'OTAN. Ils ne sont pas membres de l'OTAN. On a envoyé de l'aide militaire. Fait qu'on s'est fait des ennemis puissants. Puis il y a une solidification de l'alliance russo de la Chine puis de la Russie. Durant les 45 mois qui viennent passer, on a vu qu'ils se sont rencontrés plusieurs fois. Puis on solidifiait leur alliance politique, militaire, financière. La Russie puis la Chine. Puis l'expansion du BRICS, l'organisation qu'on appelle BRICS, ils ont rajouté d'autres pays. Fait en tant qu'analyste de théorie en géopolitique, je dois tenir compte de ces choses du micro puis du macro. Des événements géopolitiques au quotidien, puis maintenant, c'est la situation de crise au Cachemire, puis potentiellement, bien sûr, les élections en Europe, des pays membres de l'OTAN, comme dans la Roumanie, en Allemagne, en France, et tous les pays qui sont membres de l'Organisation transatlantique du Nord. Donc, on fait partie, c'est nos alliés militaires, tu sais. Et bien sûr, il faut dire que pour faire ce grand compromis qu'on a fait ici, avec le français, il faut se rajouter à d'autres choses. Il faut dire que dans la géopolitique, qu'est-ce que je vais dire maintenant, c'est qu'il faut dire oui à ça. Il n'y a pas de non. Notre intérêt principalement en tant que Québécois-Canadiens, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations possibles avec les États-Unis. Il n'y a pas de oui. Il y a oui seulement, pas, je veux dire, il y a oui seulement, pas non, pas peut-être. Mon oncle Legault, premier ministre du Québec, mon oncle Carney, il doit dire oui. Et c'est réciproque. Les États-Unis, ça doit être la même chose, vice-versa. Notre intérêt principal, primordial, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations possibles avec les États-Unis en termes de géopolitique, là. Militaire, économique, financière, politique, d'échanges culturels, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis. Ça, c'est une constance. C'est constamment oui en termes de la géopolitique. Comme pi, 3.1416, 3.1416, 3.1416. C'est la même chose. Il n'y a pas d'autre solution, là. Il n'y a pas d'autre négociation de cette constante. Comme le chiffre pi, là, en mathématiques, pour la circonférence, l'air, la surface, c'est 3.1416. Il n'y a pas de oui et, il n'y a pas de oui et non, c'est oui. C'est constamment ça. En géopolitique, pour nous, le Canada, quand je dis le roi est absent, c'est le temps pour la République, c'est le temps qu'on se libère du roi Charles, même s'il va venir, mais on va dire bon, bye bye, bienvenue, bonjour, bien vite, mais en tout cas, c'est pas le roi Charles qui va nous défendre dans le cas d'une invasion, hein. C'est une invasion de l'externe, puis du sabotage, c'est pas le roi Charles. Ça atteint des gens comme moi-même, puis moi, c'est juste pour la défense, parce que j'aime pas la violence, j'aime pas la violence, je n'aime pas la violence. L'agressivité, mais il faut faire du sport, faire de l'entraînement physique, faire de la sublimation, tu sais. Et bien sûr, la sublimation, ça prend de l'effort aussi. Il faut que je le fasse pour le français aussi, là. Mais moi-même, je suis hyper vigilant. Je suis en mode de guerre mondiale depuis 2019, octobre-novembre, parce que j'avais prévu que Dieu fait plusieurs analyses, plusieurs niveaux, plusieurs sujets, plusieurs, bien sûr, motifs, plusieurs raisons qui m'ont fait que ma conclusion en 2019, c'était que l'humain, on se dirige vers une conflagration internationale. Puis premièrement, c'était bien sûr à cause qu'il y a bien des régions, des nations, des pays qui n'ont pas été capables d'avoir de résolution de leur conflit du 20e siècle. C'est ça qui arrive en ce moment en Ukraine, l'Ukraine puis la Russie, au Moyen-Orient, Israël puis la Hamas. Hamas, ça date des années 80, la fondation de l'organisation du Hamas. Puis ça durant la guerre froide, la Chine puis le Taïwan, c'est possible que ça recommence, là. La Chine puis le Taïwan, ils n'ont pas résolu leur conflit du 20e siècle. Puis, encore une fois, le Taïwan et la Chine, aussi, c'est un conflit qui peut commencer dès aujourd'hui. Le Cachemire puis l'Inde, c'est possible qu'il commence une guerre. Est-ce que ça commence la guerre entre le Pakistan et l'Inde à cause de l'attentat terroriste du Pelgam qui vient de se passer? Du Cachemire, c'est du territoire qui... Il y a une dispute territoriale de ce territoire du Cachemire. Fait que, encore, ça date du 20e siècle. Il y a eu une guerre à cause du Cachemire en 1971. Plus que 50 ans, là. Ça fait plus que 50 ans, tu sais. Fait que mes théories, mes protocoles sont pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord, sont pour la fusion par un partenariat public-privé du Canada et des États-Unis. Et bien sûr, il commence à faire fret un peu, donc je vais juste fermer la fenêtre. Pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord. Il commence à faire fret. Pour le collectif de l'Amérique du Nord. Et ça, je pense que c'est la seule chose qui me reste depuis que j'ai déménagé ici avec rien quasiment. Je pense qu'il me reste rien de ce que j'avais, sauf ça que je l'ai trouvé avant de déménager ici, je l'ai trouvé, puis ça m'a encore gardé. Fait que, bien sûr, pour le faire pour le collectif de la civilisation de l'Amérique du Nord, il faut faire bien sûr un collectif, puis il faut faire bien sûr qu'il faut le dire, que nos intérêts sont principalement alignés avec les États-Unis, même si on vit un temps de situation de crise, quand même les tarifs, ça nous affecte, puis ça nous affecte et réciproque, donc c'est quelque chose qu'il faut bien sûr qu'on y travaille à tous les jours, puis il faut qu'on fasse une résolution, il faut qu'on fasse l'implémentation de ma TRD, je vous l'explique maintenant, la théorie de la refusion de la dette. Donc la TRD, ça contient, puis on n'a pas le choix de faire l'implémentation de ma TRD ou quelque chose qui ressemble à la théorie de la refusion de la dette pour la création de l'unité d'échange universelle à cause que l'année passée, on a payé 46,5 milliards d'intérêts sur la dette publique, 46,5 milliards sur la dette qu'on a payé sur la dette publique, là. 1 milliard 109,0. Fait que le chiffre que c'était en 2020-2021, c'était 20,3 milliards. 20,3 milliards, c'était 40,6. 40,6. C'est 20,3 fois 2, c'est 40,6. Ça aurait été le double. L'année passée, on a payé 46,5 milliards. 46,5 milliards. Fait que ça veut dire qu'un milliard 109,0, fait que ça veut dire que c'est 46 000 millions, là. C'est possible que dès demain, un effondrement des finances publiques commence. C'est possible que dès demain, un effondrement des finances publiques commence. Dès demain, c'est possible qu'il y ait un effondrement des finances publiques. Dès demain, vous imaginez-vous, là, parce qu'il y a tellement d'intérêts qu'on a payés qu'il n'a pas de solution, parce qu'imaginez-vous qu'un individu qui a payé, admettons en 2020-2021, 156 156 double, c'est 312. Si l'individu citoyenne doit payer 333 à place de 156, en seulement 3 ans, l'intérêt c'est plus que double, ça veut dire qu'elle, lui, citoyen, il faut que ça coupe dans le budget, il faut couper dans le budget, bien sûr, il faut que ça coupe dans le budget. Il faut couper dans ce budget-là. Il faut couper dans le budget. On n'a pas le choix. Qu'est-ce que vous allez couper en tant que citoyen? Ça va être dans vos affaires, mais vous allez devoir couper peut-être, arrêter de fumer la cigarette, arrêter le Netflix, arrêter de boire, arrêter les sorties dehors, arrêter des choses comme ça. Et bien sûr, c'est des choses comme ça qu'il faut mettre, bien sûr, qu'il faut qu'on coupe dans le budget. Si l'intérêt double, à moins que le salaire double, il n'y a pas bien de salaires qui ont doublé. La moyenne salariale, là, ça a été 4,4, le double. Ça a été 4,4 qui ont doublé en 5 ans. Là. Fait que c'est sûr, bien sûr, que cet intérêt, que ça monte tellement vite, puis tellement là, que ça a monté. C'est sûr qu'à cause de la COVID, moi-même, j'ai survécu la COVID en 2020, là, que j'ai eu ici au février, bien sûr. C'est des choses, bien sûr, qu'il faut que moi-même, il faut que je le fasse, bien sûr. Fait que ça a fait, bien sûr, plus que double, là. L'intérêt de 20,3 milliards à 46,5, 20,3 fois 2, c'est 40,6. Et bien sûr, dans ce compromis qu'on a fait, on doit faire ce grand compromis financier avec les États-Unis parce qu'ils sont dans une situation similaire. Donc, il n'y a pas de solution parce que je demande à M. Carney, mon oncle Carney, il a travaillé dans les banques, dans les finances, et tu connais plus que moi les finances puis les banques. Moi, je connais la géopolitique, l'entraînement physique, la danse, puis le rock-and-roll, le plus. Je connais un peu des finances parce que dans la géopolitique, il faut savoir un peu des finances, soit publiques ainsi privées. Comme moi-même, je vis une crise financière. J'ai payé mon loyer, je dois te dire de la gratitude. Là. J'ai payé mon loyer, j'ai payé ma facture d'électricité, j'ai du café, j'ai du thé, j'ai un peu de porc. Tu sais. Un peu ça, c'est du porc, ça. Fait que merci pour le don, qui m'ont fait le don pour avoir de quoi manger. Fait que bien sûr, pour le faire dans cette situation de crise financière qu'on est rendu maintenant, bien sûr, il faut qu'on coupe dans le budget, comme qu'un individu doit couper dans le budget, comme ça on doit couper dans les finances publiques, parce que l'intérêt seulement, ça a plus que doublé. Notre économie n'a pas doublé. L'économie du Canada, ça n'a pas été double. C'est sûr que ça n'a pas été double, bien sûr, dans ce compromis linguistique qu'on a fait. Ça n'a pas été double. Notre produit intérieur brut n'a pas doublé. L'intérêt a doublé sur la dette. Fait que, M. Carney, mon oncle Carney, qu'est-ce qu'on va couper? La sanitation, le service de ramassage des poubelles, du recyclage, le compostage, la police, les prisons. On va devoir couper quelque chose dans le budget. Qu'est-ce qu'on va couper? Fait que la TRD, c'est la seule et unique solution, quelque chose qui ressemble à TRD. C'est un paradoxe, là, mais il faut faire l'implémentation. Dans ma TRD est inclus la théorie d'intégration monétaire, ce qui est la théorie que les Européens ont fait de l'implémentation dans les années 90. Les Allemands, les Italiens, les Français ont fait de l'implémentation de cette théorie, bien sûr. C'est la théorie de la refusion de la dette. Et non, c'est dans ma théorie de la refusion de la dette est inclus la théorie d'intégration monétaire, ce qui est la théorie financière que les Européens ont faite. Les Allemands, ils ont fait, bien sûr, la destruction de leur banque centrale, les Italiens aussi, les Français aussi. Ils ont fait l'implémentation de la théorie d'intégration monétaire pour avoir, bien sûr, une nouvelle monnaie, une banque centrale de l'Europe qui ont fait la création d'une banque centrale commune multinationale. Fait que ma TRD, ça inclut la théorie d'intégration financière. Théorie de la refusion de la dette, il faut faire l'implémentation simultanément avec les États-Unis. On n'a pas le choix. On est en train d'avoir peut-être dès demain un effondrement des finances publiques canadiennes. C'est urgent, là. Le roi est absent, c'est le temps pour la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, puis pour la République. On va prendre toute TRD, je vous l'explique, théorie de la refusion de la dette. On va prendre toute la dette publique-privée, incluant mon 10 000, du Canada, des Québécois et Québécoises, du Canada, public-privé, on va faire toute cette dette-là, on va faire la conversion dans la devise des États-Unis. on va l'additionner, on va faire l'addition avec la dette publique privée des États-Unis. Et tout cet argent-là, ça va être l'argent initial pour la création d'une nouvelle banque, qu'on va mettre en circulation une nouvelle monnaie, l'UI. U.unité, U.échange, U.universel. universel. UI. U.unité, U.échange, U universel. U.unité, U.échange, U universel. Le UI. On ne s'ostinera pas. En anglais, c'est pareil. UI, il va avoir la valeur du dollar des États-Unis. U.unité, U.échange, U universel. Tout cet argent-là, on va mettre en fonction et on va faire le financement du travail public. On va rebâtir l'infrastructure, les aqueducs, les ponts. On va financer les gens au tourisme à travers les 63, les 50 États, plus 10 provinces, plus 3 territoires. Ça fait 63 à travers les 63 nouveaux territoires du Collectif d'Amérique du Nord, du Royaume du Dragon et de la déesse qui danse. Et bien sûr, on va faire un recensement, un grand recensement. On va enlever la frontière, on va faire un grand passeport, un nouveau passeport commun. Canada, États-Unis, on va construire les 44 tunnels. Dans le cas d'une guerre thermonucléaire, on va bâtir les 44 tunnels, basés, inspirés sur la montagne Cheyenne et bien sûr sur le village souterrain de Montréal. Et bien sûr, on va financer les gens au tourisme, financer les gens à l'entraînement physique. On va bâtir plus de centrales Hydro-Québec. On va financer, bien sûr, bien des choses pour le commun, pour le principe. On va financer la construction du palais du peuple arc-en-ciel, la pyramide du dragon rouge écarlate, le temple de la déesse oubliée, le colisée du peuple nord-américain impérial qui va être 11 fois plus que le César Superdome, qui était connu comme le Harbor Bowl et qui est Black Harbor, comme mon Super Bowl préféré a été fait. Prêtez allégeance, les gens, vous êtes famille, soutenez la TRD, c'est le temps qu'on fasse la TRD, théorie de la réfusion, puis bien sûr qu'on fasse, bien sûr, l'implémentation de ma TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette. C'est la seule unique solution. Support the dream, soutenez le rêve. The Dancing Goddess in the Dragon Kingdom, Adriana Dragon, Adrian Hanna Dragon. Dragon arc-en-ciel Rainbow Dragon.